What happened to Andrew Dawson? Andrew Dawson was a regular TikToker who used TikTok to share his everyday life. However, his life took a sudden turn after he posted a video claiming to have filmed a giant in Jasper National Park in Alberta, Canada. Over the next few weeks, he documented his hunt to find and filmed the creature, but in the process he claimed that he was being harassed, followed, and stalked by the CIA. Dawson disappeared for over a month, and when he returned, he posted an update video that seemed extremely strange and forced according to viewers.
Sorry to disappoint you guys, but all the videos that I posted were scripted. They're just fake. They were just strictly for entertainment.
Unfortunately, his next video would be his last, as on July 1st, Dawson mysteriously passed away at the age of 34, so I bet you're wondering.
The abandoned church of St. Mary the Virgin is said to be one of the most haunted buildings in England. Stood in the village of Clophill since 1350, it is said to face the wrong direction. Churches should face east towards the rising sun, but St. Mary's does not, therefore turning its back on God and opening up to evil. Laying abandoned since the 1840s, the eerie building has allegedly played host to satanic rituals. The unholy ground is also known for its resident poltergeist that throws heavy stones at visitors and cackles loudly. This entity is thought to have been conjured by one of the dark rituals and made the church its home.
This Instagram user posted experiments they have been doing with the paranormal entity in their basement. There are footsteps, then the balloon is hit by an unseen force. In a second video, more footsteps are followed by the owner's hand being slapped. Finally, he tries one more experiment. Watch what happens.
Check out this creepy chair.
People were texting me and asking me, really, give us the story. Did someone die in it? Did someone melt in it?
Dee Whitlock bought the chair online, but she never noticed the eerie outline of a man in the chair until it was delivered to her home in Oklahoma and she tried to resell it.
I put on there, beautiful chair, nothing wrong with it. And that's what really grabbed the attention of all the viewers. People were commenting, yeah, except there's someone that died in it.
It is reminding lots of people of the terrifying chair in the movie The Conjuring. My house!
It's him.
And also a scene from The Invisible Man.
And his arms come down, and you can even see right here that you can see where the hands would have been like this. This is intriguing to me. You can see where the legs have.
The Worst Punishments in History, Part 2. In Part 2, we're going to be talking about a very disturbing, yet popular punishment from ancient times. This form of punishment was called rat torture, and it was reserved for the worst of the worst. In order to carry out this punishment, offenders would have a bucket strapped to their chest or their face or any other important part of their body, and a rat would then be placed inside of it. Typically, these buckets would be located on the torso or your midsection, and then heat would be applied to one end of the bucket. This heat would then force the rat to go towards the only soft thing attached to the bucket, and that would be your body. This is the point that it became very disturbing, and the rat would burrow its way out of your body, going through whatever it had to in order to get away from the heat source. Boy, am I glad that this no longer exists.
Discovered in India, this small plant seems to have a life of its own. It rotates and moves without any outside interaction. Hundreds of people now visit the plant and have started to worship and leave offerings, believing this to be a miraculous event. The Indian government invited top geologists from around the world to study the plant, but none have agreed exactly why the plant moves on its own.
This is why they started putting bells on grave sites. Being buried alive is probably one of the most terrifying things that could ever happen to you, and it actually happened a lot more than you think. One of the most infamous cases was of a woman who was buried alive not once, but twice. A woman named Alice drank a drink that contained poppy seed that put her into such a sedated state that the doctors pronounced her dead and quickly buried her. But a few days after they buried her, some children were playing above her gravesite, kind of weird, but okay, and they heard groans and screams coming from inside her grave. She had been fighting and clawing and doing everything she could to try to get out of her coffin, fighting with her literal life. A day later, they finally got in and got her body out, but she was so bloody and so bruised that she seemed like she was on the brink of death and didn't seem like she was moving. So, assuming that she had been alive for the last couple of days, but now she wasn't, they put her back in the grave and put her right back down. A graveyard worker was charged with the task of watching over her grave to make sure that if any other noises occurred throughout the night, they'd be able to pull her out. But sometime he decided that he didn't want to do that and he left to go to a local pub. However, she still hadn't died. She woke up in her coffin again. She scratched, she tore, she did everything she could, going into a full-blown panic about being put back in the ground. This time, when they went under to check her coffin to make sure that she had died, they found all the fresh scratches, all the fresh wounds from her trying to escape again, but this time, she had finally died. And that's why they started putting bells on grave sites.
There was some crazy story that happened about a doppelgang teacher in France. There was a 32-year-old woman teacher. In her 16 years of teaching, she switched schools 19 times. And people didn't understand why. And it's because she apparently had a doppelganger that she didn't notice. There was 3 occurrences, right? One of them, all the students were sitting down. She was teaching the class. She turns around and she starts drawing on the chalkboard.
Yeah.
All the students noticed that there's something right beside her that's copying her exact motion. Lily's right beside her. But when she turns around and she asks the class what's going on, they're like, oh, what the fuck? She disappeared.
What the fuck?
Same day, she goes into the lunchroom. She starts eating. Students are telling her, Miss, there's literally someone right beside you who's eating and copying your motion. She's like, there's no one there.
Yeah.
And this is the third one where she finally got kicked out. There was a substitute teacher filling in for her. So the kids, everyone's normal. The real teacher walks in. One kid goes out in the hallway.
Real Disney Ghost Stories, sent in by you guys, part 1. These Disneyland cast members wish to remain anonymous, but here are some stories about the little girl who haunts California Adventure. When I worked in Disney California Adventure, we would sometimes see a little girl and she would show up in the bakery tour alone. And usually by the time we figured out she was alone, she's gone. We asked another cast in the bakery and they said she comes by every now and then and wanders all the way to Little Mermaid. Before Disney California Adventure was built, it was a parking lot and she was hit by a tram, and since then her ghost has haunted the area. It's funny because there's a pattern here. Another cast member wrote to me about this little girl as well in Disney California Adventure. First of all, he says that every land has some sort of ghost. Like every little land in Disneyland has something that haunts it, which is crazy. The ghost I experienced the most and will stay with me is the little girl in the Little Mermaid building. She also likes to walk around on the Grizzly Peak side. She even pulled my keys out of my pocket because I wouldn't respond to her while I was cleaning a restroom, and she was pounding a stall door. What? That is so scary. Here's another ghost story about the same girl. Apparently her name is Jennifer. I work at the restaurant on Buena Vista Street in California Adventure. Jennifer is very well known by cast members. She likes to lock the women's restroom doors. She turns candlesticks on the walls upstairs. I've heard a faint scream in the hallway on the 2nd floor. She's pulled my hair a couple times, and she has shown herself to our custodial at 3 a.m. Have you ever had an encounter with this little girl spirit at Disney California Adventure? Let me know in the comments, and keep sending me more Disney ghost stories.
Photos with disturbing backgrounds. Some remains were found and were confirmed to be linked back to them. However, nobody knows exactly what happened. Follow for the next part.
Back up! Back up or I'll fucking kill you! You don't know what you're doing! What the fuck is that? Goddamn, Margot, run! Run, Margot, run!
There's like a crazy red ribbon story. When you're in Japan, once you're dead and you're gonna get sent into the morgue, they give you a red ribbon. In Canada, we have a white ribbon with all of our information on it. There was this doctor, right? I think he worked overnight and his last patient was supposedly at 2 a.m. So he's like, all right, let me take a break. I'm gonna go to the basement. He goes into the basement with another woman. He's just talking. He's like, oh, how's your day? Everything's normal.
Yeah.
They get to the basement. The doors open. They see an old guy, like an old patient, walking. And he's getting closer and closer to the elevator. And the guy, he starts spamming the close the elevator door. And the woman's like, he's hurting. Why didn't you let him in? He's like, only the dead have a red ribbon. Oh, shit. He asked the woman, did you see that red ribbon or was it just me? And this is crazy. You know what the woman says?
What?
She says, oh, something like this? She rolls up her sleeve.
Oh shit! Oh my god, everybody's fucking screaming!
The Worst Punishments in History, Part 1. In this video, we're going to be talking about an invention from the 1500s called the Scold's Bridle, and this thing looks straight out of a Saw movie. Obviously, from the shape of this, you can tell that this is meant to be worn on the offender's head. If you were to travel back to the 1500s, you would mainly see women wearing these, and they were meant to publicly humiliate and punish them for speaking out against authority, which was highly discouraged at the time. It's extremely painful to wear. You can see all these sharp edges down here where your mouth is, as well as a bell on top to attract attention and to maximize the amount of embarrassment that you receive from wearing this.
Somebody burst into flames at Marilyn Manson's house.
Care to elaborate?
1920s Hollywood Hills neighborhood, and Charlie Chaplin had built the house. Then the Rolling Stones manager bought it, and the Rolling Stones stayed there. Got too scary for him. He moved out. Marilyn moved in. The house looks like it was built like with sacred geometry, like at a Masonic temple. And one kid was starting to say really stupid things. First, great things were happening. The French doors flew open and everybody screamed. The speaker came on. It was all white noise. It sounded like a spirit box. Wasn't plugged in. The radio. And we're working with the Ouija board, but the kid sent something really stupid again, and literally not him, but the cameraman burst into flames. Literally, he was not standing in front of a fireplace or a candle. I drop and roll, and I'm calling all my guardians and wards. And Fire was a super skeptic. 3 weeks later, the cameraman, who became a believer immediately, he showed me his back, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh my God, you have a tramp stamp of a dragon on your back.
These chains were used to torture children after the Civil War. This is the haunted orphanage in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. In the years following the Civil War, this building was used as a residence for the children whose fathers passed away in the Civil War. An evil head matron named Rosa Carmichael would torture kids for something as simple as stealing bread. But the reason the kids would even have to steal the bread in the first place is because she was also starving them. This exhibit is a remake of what the pit would look like with a kid chained up inside. They would be like this for hours, days, or weeks. It is confirmed that Rosa's torture methods killed at least one child, but there is rumored to be many more deaths. This building is also extremely haunted, and in the gift shop when they were painting the walls, they found these fingerprints. Could they have been made by the spirit of a child who Rosa tortured?
McDonald's ghost stories. I was working a late shift cleaning up the restrooms after a busy Friday night. While I was wiping the baby changing area, I heard a strange moan come from one of the stalls. I was the only person in the restroom. I checked the stall to see if it was an animal or something, but nothing was in there. I turned around and in the mirror I saw the reflection of a woman, just her head and torso floating. She was trying to talk to me, but it sounded all garbled and I couldn't hear what she was saying. I ran out of that bathroom so fast. Dude, what? Why is this lady hanging out in the bathroom of a McDonald's? Here's another one. I was a maintenance worker at McDonald's. One of my tasks was cleaning and repairing the playland area. One night I was climbing through the slides and the tunnels and heard a child's laughter echo through the crawl space. It was weird because the restaurant was closed and I was there alone, but I thought it was maybe coming from outside. I turned the corner and saw a little girl in a pink sweater go down the slide by herself. I checked the bottom of the slide to see if she came out of it, but there was no one there. There was a tragic accident a few years back on the road next to our building that involved a family. I always wondered if she was involved in that. I have never seen her since then, but I always feel a presence watching over me. That's really sad. Okay, last one. There is a ghost of a former customer who haunts our location. What? She was an older lady who would come here all the time. All of our employees see her when the restaurant is empty, usually in the early mornings. Her figure sits in one of the booths. She doesn't say anything and only stays a few seconds before her figure vanishes. I still don't know to this day why she chose to haunt this place. Maybe she just loved the food that much. I mean, same. She's not evil though, it's just a little startling sometimes. Do you have a ghost story at a McDonald's or any fast food establishment? Let me know.
A Reddit user was recently watching a 1977 special featuring one of Elvis Presley's very last concerts. And she noticed that something very interesting was caught on film.
The following program was recorded a few months ago, and it represents
Check out the woman holding the very modern cell phone. Could this be proof of time travel?
Photos with disturbing backstories. Behind me is a photo of some astronauts. They're the crew for the Columbia. This photo is genuinely very happy. All of them have big smiles on their faces because they're having the time of their life. However, what they don't know in this photo is that in a few days' time, they will no longer be alive. The shuttle was irreparably damaged, and this photo is what happened when they tried to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. This disaster was a result of irreparable damage that was done to some of the tiles on the shuttle. And for our second photo, we're going to be visiting this seemingly very happy family on a special night out. The guy on the right is Bart Whitaker, and what his family doesn't know that's also in this photo is that he's hired 2 people as hitmen to take the lives of his entire family. Bart's mother and brother did end up losing their lives, however the father that took this photo ended up surviving. Follow for the next part.
Do you guys know why refrigerators are magnetic? Before the year 1956, refrigerators had latchets that would only open from the outside. And they were sealed with rubber, so they were also soundproof. When kids would play hide and seek, they would end up hiding inside of these refrigerators. And because they only opened from the outside, they would end up suffocating. And no, they cannot yell for their parents because the rubber makes them soundproof. The Refrigerator Safety Act started in 1956 to prevent that from happening, and all refrigerator companies decided to make them magnetic so that they would stay sealed, but they would also open from the inside. There were a couple of old ones still laying around, and the most recent case of this happening was back in 2013, when 2 South African kids were stuck inside of a refrigerator and ended up suffocating to death.
In the dark rural hills of Lancashire, a coven of witches were said to have sold their souls to Satan and practiced black magic. This resulting in England's most infamous trial of the Pendle witches in 1612. The story begins when a young beggar named Alison Device asked a peddler for some pins. He refused, and the girl cursed him, later relaying that a black dog appeared to carry out this bidding. The peddler collapsed, falling ill, so the girl believed her witchcraft to be true. When questioned, she went on to blame her own grandmother Demdike and the local feuding Chattox family. Both families went on to blame each other for local deaths and being present at a witches' sabbath. The authorities had heard enough and the witches were tried at Lancaster Castle, the majority condemned on the testimony of 9-year-old sister to Alison, young Jeanette. Demdike died awaiting trial, and ultimately 10 people hung for witchcraft.